Stilly want to say that I hope that God gives you many, many more years of successful effort here in this country of ours.
Thank you, Robbie. Your kind words must be somewhat extravagant because of our long and pleasant personal relationship.
That just about does it for now. See you soon. From time to time, prominent Americans have suggested that we follow Ireland's lead and have a national lottery based on one of America's best-known sporting events, the Kentucky Derby, for instance. I'd like to give you my views immediately following this important message. Personally, I'm in favor of some kind of a national lottery. I don't agree with those who say that gambling breeds crime. I think if you look at past history, you will find that where you outlaw certain kinds of things, this is where that you have crime. When we had Prohibition, what happened? The gangsters came in, they brought in illegal whiskey, they made all kinds that wasn't inspected. Therefore, you had not only illegal whiskey, but you had something that was bad for their health. And let's look at the lottery that would come in here. Would this bring in the gangsters? I say no. First of all, I think that when you don't allow legalized gambling, once again, the gangsters come in, they take over, and you run into all kinds of problems. But if you had this thing legalized and you had it supervised day in and day out, perhaps even have it government controlled, I think that you would find that you would be benefiting the little man who can afford to gamble. People say that let's not have off-track betting. They frown on it. They say that it's going to cause all kinds of trouble, that more and more people are going to be betting who cannot afford to do so. I think this is kind of ridiculous. First of all, no one is forced to bet. Those who like it will bet. Those who do not like it will not bet. Let's not worry about whether or not people are going to lose $2 here or there when they can't afford it, because they're going to do it anyway. And I kind of have an idea that you could make some of these schools that we're trying to build, new schools, the beneficiaries of a lottery, or a new hospital could come into being because of a lottery such as they have in Ireland, or perhaps the government in trying to build more and more homes could get some money to build homes for the people who are now living in slums, or perhaps for the aged even. Perhaps we could get it for hospitalization. Frankly, I think we'd have a lot less crime than we have if we were allowed to bet anytime, any place we wanted to. Naturally, ladies and gentlemen, this is a personal opinion. I'd like to know what some of you think on this particular subject, and I hope that you agree, and perhaps someday we will have legalized lottery here in the United States. Well, that just about does it for now, fans. See you soon. Fans, today I'm going to talk about the so-called art of stealing home. Actually, it's not too much we can talk about because it's a matter of, split-second timing. But we'll begin this little expose right after we hear this important message. The art of stealing home actually isn't an art at all. It's, I think, split-second timing. Everyone knows that you can't outrun the baseball, and so a lot of people wonder, well, how is it possible then to get 90 feet when the pitcher has to throw the ball a lot less distance than that and still make it home safely? Well, first let me point out one thing about stealing home. It's practically impossible for the manager or the coach to give you a signal to steal home on this particular pitch or on any given pitch, because you can't tell whether or not the pitcher is going to go into that extra windup. And if he doesn't, you're a dead duck at home plate because, as I said earlier, you can't outrun that baseball. So then, how does a man get 90 feet when the pitcher throws, about 65, 70 feet, whatever the distance is? And I say it simply this. When I'm on third base, I take a pretty big lead off of third base. When the pitcher goes into his windup, I move up as far as I possibly can. And if he takes an extra windup, that is when and only when you can determine whether you can get home or not. Now let's take this into consideration. I'm moving up, I get about halfway, and I quickly flash in my mind, the fellow's going to now throw home on this pitch. I've got to stop dead. and go back towards third base as fast as I possibly can, or else I'm out the other way. So actually reflexes enter into this thing as much as anything else, too. I think it's kind of silly, as I did in the World Series, to attempt to steal home when you're 2 runs behind, or if you're 2 or 3 runs out in front. Sometimes you do it for, well, tactical reasons. I attempted to steal home when we were 2 runs behind because we had been a team that was playing strictly orthodox baseball. We had been beaten day in and day out. It was my idea that perhaps if we did something unorthodox, it might spur the ball club up. So with 2 runs behind in the 8th inning, I stole home. Many people were critical of me, but they didn't realize that there was more to it than just the attempt of stealing home. Well, this is all there is, in my opinion, in the stealing of home. Knowing yourself, knowing baseball, knowing the fellow that's pitching on the mound. If you make it, you're lucky. I was lucky some 20 times during my baseball career, and I think very frankly that this is one of the most thrilling plays in the game of baseball. I don't know whether I helped you or not, but that's the way I did it. And that just about does it for now, fans. See you soon. My guest today will be Harold Seymour, historian, doctor of philosophy, and author of the standard work, Baseball, The Early Years. In his book, Dr. Seymour states that yours truly was not the first Negro to play in the major leagues. We're going to ask him this very question just as soon as we hear this important message.
And you say in your book that Jackie Robinson was not the first Negro
That's
in
right.
baseball. Who, where, and when did this happen?
Well, the first Negro big leaguer played in 1884 with the Toledo Club, which at that time was in the American Association, which was a major league.
Uh-huh.
And his name was Moses Fleetwood Walker, and I think a rather remarkable individual. He was a catcher, Fleet Walker.
Right. Mm-hmm.
And he went to Oberlin College. That was a rare thing in those days. Ball players didn't go to college.
Mm-hmm.
And he played a short while. He had 40-some-odd games in the major leagues, and he was officially the first one who did. There were several others, you see. And then, of course, in the 1880s, there was a tremendous amount of discrimination. One of the greatest stars of the time refused to put his ball club on the field against Negro players, Cap Anson of the White Sox.
Cap Anson?
Cap Anson.
Oh.
And Walker, for example, he submitted. He had to submit to a tremendous amount of discrimination. Mm. In fact, he got threatening letters, and in one ball game he had to sit in the stands for fear that his life was in danger. The manager didn't play him.
This is in 18 what?
In the 80s. I don't know the exact date. I don't recall it, but I have it in my book.
1880s. It seems to me that one Jackie Robinson got some threatening letters in 1946,
I don't doubt
47, 48 too. So they were also writing them way back in the 1880s.
Absolutely.
Mm-hmm. From the 80s through the 40s.
Right down until your time, they had the undeclared coal line. And this, to me, was one of the big contradictions in this whole system of baseball, where they kept talking about democracy. They were equating baseball with democracy.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
You'd think that there had been mention of baseball in the Declaration of Independence to hear some of the owners talk about it in those days. But they didn't have it.
What about today? Do you think that baseball is completely open to people of all races now?
It looks that way. I think probably, and I can't document this, but I suspect that some of the clubs have certainly lagged on it.
Right.
You see.
Dr. Harold Seymour, it's been a real pleasure having you on.
Thank you very much. It's been a great pleasure to be here and talk with you.
And that just about does it for now, fans. See you soon.
And I hope you enjoyed those radio shots, as Jackie Robinson called them, from his show in 1960. The last one was with that was Dr. Harold Seymour, who's written he wrote an excellent book on the history of baseball. And I have to correct, because this is 1960 when this came out, but the first professional black player in Major League Baseball, what was called Major League Baseball back then, 1872, was actually Bud Fowler. That was discovered many years after this book was published. So Bud Fowler actually was the first one, although I am sure there were others prior to Bud Fowler that have not been discovered and not sure of. And as you know, there are a lot of folks who were passing, who still pass now. So, we will find out more information, but I hope you enjoy those interviews that Jackie Robinson did with Dr. Seymour. I need some water there. Also with Monty Irving, Satchel Paige, Branch Rickey, and also hearing his editorials. I hope you enjoyed that on the Root and Root Show. One thing I got to say, you're going to see this year, since this is the 75th anniversary of Jackie Robinson integrating the major leagues, you're going to see a lot of books written about Jackie Robinson. They're already out there, a lot of publications. But I always suggest that you go to the primary source, which is Jackie himself. Read his book, I Never Had It Made, and see what he says, because there's a lot of things that people have said about him that are contradicted in his book. They said, no, that you can see that, no, actually, this is not what Jackie Robinson was about. And I say that with any figure in history, they always go to the primary source, what they were saying. Also, if you can, get a book by Michael Long, that's The Letters of Jackie Robinson. I interviewed Michael many years ago about the book, but it's First Class Citizens, The Letters of Jackie Robinson. They're fascinating. In particular, Jackie Robinson's correspondence was in debates with Malcolm X. That's worth the book alone. So, if please check that book out, but read the primary sources and learn about Jackie on your own that way. So right now, I'm going to play some music dedicated to him, starting with Count Basie and his orchestra. And a lot of people have probably heard this slightly different version of this song. And this is Did You See Jackie Robinson Hit That Ball? Let's hear it on the Root and Root Show.
Robinson hit that ball. It went zooming across the left field wall. Yeah, boy.
Yes, Jackie hit that ball.
And when he swung his bat, the crowd went wild because he knocked that ball a solid mile. Yeah, boy.
Yes, Jackie hit that ball. Satchel Paige is mellow, so is Campanella, Newcomb and Dobie too. But it's a natural fact, when Jackie comes to bat, the other team is through.
Did you see Jackie Robinson hit that ball? Did he hit it? Yes, and that ain't all. He stole home.
Yes, Jackie's real gone. Jackie's real gone. 'Cause Jackie is a real gone guy.
If I pitch, can you catch? Will you hold the ball? When you step to the plate, will you swing